was the trip that Emily and I took down to Brazil. It was everything imaginable, including Emily trying to figure out how to hide snakes in my room. Don't ever travel with her, it's not what you think it will be. The copaiba is a unique tree. And all of the plants that we receive essential oils from in their own way carry some uniqueness. The reason I wanted to show this picture was not so I could say, oh, well, the copaiba tree grows 100 feet tall. It's because of the gentleman who's standing in this picture. He, like so many of the people that we work with across the globe, is generational in this enterprise. It is him and his family and his associates that we're trying to impact, that we're working with, and that we're helping them to grow their ability to not only be financially stable, but to belong to something that is greater than themselves, just like doTERRA is greater than ourselves collectively. What a remarkable opportunity that is for them. And we spent a good amount of time all the way up the Amazon. I kept threatening to throw Emily out into the river with the piranhas, but she knew I probably couldn't do it, even though I wanted to a time or two. Now, the oil itself comes from a resin. I showed this picture not because I wanted you to see how studious Emily and I were at watching that resin drip out of the tree. I show this to you because that resin contains essential oil within it. It's unique as a resin because it comes out as a liquid. Now the debate is out. I read some literature that says, oh, it contains as much as 90% essential oil. And I read some research that says it contains very little essential oil. Our yield is somewhere around 40 to 50%, I believe, is what our yield is from that resin. This carries with it some unique properties. Why CPTG and our standards in doTERRA are so critical is because most of the copaiba oil you see in the marketplace is what's coming out of that tree in that picture. It's the resin. It's because we can extend it. It's because we can get more. We don't do that in doTERRA for the same reason, in the same context that I've talked about before for CPTG. And so it's really important that we isolate the oil because it's more than just the endocannabinoid system. And it's because of all the other chemistry. Now, I've showed this slide to you before where we've talked about it's a liver protectant, it's a cardiovascular protectant, it supports the immune system, it's good for digestive support, neurological function, respiratory function. All of that is code for three things. It reduces inflammation, it reduces pain, and it protects the cells. The pillars and the cornerstone of why this essential oil is so critical. Copaiba, as an essential oil, is more than 98% pure sesquiterpenes. Now, I made a commitment to myself I was going to talk about chemistry today, but as it turns out, I can't talk about oils without at least mentioning chemistry. And the value that we have with sesquiterpenes, just so you know, one of the things that makes this oil unique, we have another oil that's similar, and it's vetiver. Vetiver also has a substantial amount of sesquiterpenes associated with it. Sandalwood has a substantial amount of sesquiterpenes associated with it. Copaiba has a lot of sesquiterpenes associated with it. And the advantage that we have is that they last longer. They're a little slower to be metabolized, so we have longer lasting effects. But because of the complexity of the sesquiterpenes, it means that we also have opportunity that we can have secondary and tertiary metabolites that develop so that we have a diminishing point of returns over time. And while it may start out as this, as it gets metabolized, it carries its own benefits in a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary metabolic view or metabolism that happens within the body. So we get very detailed outcomes associated with it. Now, I'm only going to highlight a few in the few moments I have left. This was a really interesting study that was done, and it talks about damage to the neurological tissue. Damage that happened, in this case, subsequent to a stroke. But there's lots of things that can damage our tissues, isn't there? Poor nutrition, toxicity, bad outcomes associated with free radicals. There's a number of different things that anytime, remember what I said, we have inflammation in the body, we have damage to the tissues. And so we know that when we have damage to the tissue, we have an intense inflammatory response. And in this case, part of the response was happening with the immune cells, the neutrophils, to be very specific. And they themselves are releasing free radicals. We're causing more damage to the tissues. And other inflammatory cytokines also are released in that process, all of which are focused around not just the initial insult to the tissue, but there is a secondary insult that comes to the tissue. And what they showed, and they showed it because of the protective sequence here, because of beta-carophylline, they showed this protective sequence where it protected against that oxidative stress. It protected against that inflammatory response for the surrounding tissues as they were under attack, as is part of the body's process. But what they showed was they could actually more quickly heal and reverse the damage that was associated with those primary type events that are so damaging, like a stroke. Now I look at that and I think to myself, well, how many of you are going to have a stroke today? Hopefully none of us. But we're all going to be associated with pro-inflammatory markers in our body. We're going to be exposed to toxicity. We're going to be exposed to poor nutrition. We're going to have free radical damage. We're going to have uncontrolled inflammation in one regard or another. This is the progression of disease that we see. And so this, I felt like, became applicable in a greater context to what we see with copaiba and the value that it brings. It had a synergistic effect. Now remember what I said, when we isolate chemistry, we have singular compounds that are functioning and working. However, with the essential oils, one of the things that we have seen over and over again is their synergistic effect. And there was an acute reduction in the microglial, neutrophil, and macrophage activity. In other words, the inflammation at the site stopped, and healing could then begin more fully. Now, we talked a lot about inflammation cofactors. This is where the relevance is for each one of us. And last year at convention, we talked a lot about inflammation. And so I'm going to give you a reminder of another essential oil that we have that I'm proposing would be good to use in context with the copaiba. And of course, it's turmeric. Now remember, turmeric as an essential oil is different than turmeric as a botanical. And turmeric as an essential oil, we talked a lot about all the tumerones that it has. And we talked about it being neuroprotective. It protected the cells of the body. And specifically, I isolated and spoke about the neurology of the body, the neurochemistry of the body. And so here's the first suggestion I would like to make for you. Because we all have those four factors ever present in our life of nutrition and stress and inflammation and free radical damages. Combine 2 drops of copaiba, 2 drops of turmeric, take in a capsule, 1 in the morning and 1 in the evening. I would expect for 2 things to begin to happen. One is you'll start to feel notably better. If you're having pain, it will begin to ease some of that discomfort. And that will happen in sequence and as a consequence associated with the body beginning to repair itself and controlling those damaging sequences. It will also act as a way for your body to support itself against free radical damage. It'll become a self-protectant for you. I believe this is an everyday essential oil. Now here's a few other suggestions I can give to you today. Internal use. Now we know we can use this topically, aromatically, and internally, but here's my recommendations for copaiba. If you just want to use copaiba itself, use it in the morning and use it in the evening. 2 drops, 3 drops in a capsule, or take our copaiba soft gel every night and every morning. Taking 1 or 2 drops under the tongue is a good idea because we get a systemic consequence prior to hard metabolism that goes through the liver. So it's just an issue of pathway. So if I'm looking for more of a whole body opportunity, under the tongue becomes a great way to think about using the essential oils. Now I know I'm oversimplifying some of these things, but that is what we're looking for within them. Use 1 drop of copaiba and peppermint. I talked about this already for digestive support. Or frankincense and lemongrass and copaiba for liver support. I like all 3 of those in context one with another because of how they can be supportive of the liver. Now about the other 2 ways that we can use them, aromatically and internally. Acne. Most people don't think about that in the context of copaiba, but it has a lot of qualities topically for use on the skin, not just for irritation and pain, but also for clarifying the skin. So I like using copaiba with 1 drop of melaleuca directly over the affected area, or add copaiba to a face wash or your face scrub. Think about using it topically in that context. Now there's other ways and other reasons we can use it topically as well. For skin irritations, the yarrow palm, are you loving that essential oil combination? Adding a little bit of copaiba to that and using that in the skin applications is going to be really good. I read a lot of research over the last several months that's been talking about a lot of the autoimmune conditions that we see within the skin, things like psoriasis and other things. And the effect and the value, and there's all kinds of detail that goes into that, but that comes from copaiba essential oil. So combining copaiba with yarrow palm, which has similar benefits, can be a great opportunity for you. And then for pain, of course, applying it directly over the area. Now I'm going to give you a reason to dilute the copaiba essential oil. And the reason to dilute is so that we can hold it, localize it right within the tissues where we are. Now, if I'm having more of a global response associated with pain, I might consider taking it within a capsule. But if it's localized, I've hurt my knee or it's my shoulder, apply it topically over that area and dilute it so that it remains in those tissues for longer periods of time. It will begin to metabolize, we'll have an enzymatic response localized right within those tissues. So that's a great way you can now start using copaiba. And then, of course, lastly, how we'll use it aromatically. Now, I've given you some of my favorite ways to combine copaiba in an aromatic usage model. And I'll close with this by saying that I really don't care how it is that we use the essential oils. Honestly, I don't. There was a time where I was very specific and identified very clearly, do exactly this and be exactly this way. And there's times for us to be that specific. But in a general sense, my challenge to you is, along with me, to come back to the basics. Let's get back to who we are. And who we are is avid users of essential oils. And who we are is purists with essential oils. And who we are is the world's leader in essential oils. Would you agree with me? Thank you for being with me this morning. I look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. I'll be coming to as many of your places as I possibly can. I'm looking forward to the next 3 years with you. Thank you very much.